Hi everybody, welcome to week 3 of English 3180. Man, we're just getting rolling here. I am going to take this video and use it to talk to you about our focus for the week, your assignments. I want to do my weekly 20,000 foot pass over the readings to make sure that everybody is clear on some of the key takeaways that you should be getting from this week's readings. And when I close out this video, I just want to take a moment to talk about our discussion thread assignment. There are a few small changes that are coming or being enacted, I guess you would say, that I want to just make sure I go over with you guys. So before I get to that, I'm going to switch over to my screen share view so I can talk you through the week's assignments and get started on our mini lecture. Okay. So here we are in week 3, and you'll notice that the first thing that's different is that I've changed the title of this module because I did go through and kind of pull some of the readings that I was initially going to assign to you guys, and I realized this week we're really only talking about 2 figures in ancient Greece rhetorical theory, Aspasia and Isocrates. So the title of the module now reflects that. We're really only reading 2 primary pieces, and the first one, we're only reading an excerpt from Against the Sophists by Isocrates. We'll also be reading more of the whole piece of the Encomium of Helen. And then we have 2 secondary sources, the spicily titled Sex, Lies, and Manuscript from Glenn, and Isocrates, Techne, and Rhetorical Pedagogy, a little less snappy of a title from Papillon. This week you'll do your chat check-in 3, and the prompt for that this week has to do with like an ancient would you rather. Would you rather be an ancient Grecian or an ancient Roman? Why or why not? Now, if you don't know very much about those 2 societies, it's okay. You could just base it on even superficial things about like, oh, I'd rather live in Greece than in Italy, acknowledging that both places had large, wide-ranging empires. But if you do know a little bit about the differences between ancient Greece and ancient Rome, it could be a fun question to toy with. So chat check-in 3, would you rather be an ancient Grecian or an ancient Roman, and why? Okay. So we're going to do reading response number 3, and the prompt for that stays largely the same. You're just kind of responding to and synthesizing the readings, and your reading discussion number 3, which we'll talk about at the end of this video. So I'm going to switch over to my mini lecture slides and talk you through some of the key points of this week's readings. Okay. So we are going to be talking about Isocrates and Aspasia, and they do connect not only because they're contemporaries, but because some of the things that we'll see in Isocrates' writing supports what we know about how women, and particularly any woman who may, though rarely, but there were women involved in forwarding rhetorical theory at the time, how were they treated and how were they viewed? I mean, I think we can answer that in a short way, but we're going to get into that in a little bit more detail with our readings. So the piece that we're reading by Isocrates Against the Sophists is showing us both Isocrates' style of persuasion and giving us a little bit more of a glimpse into how the Sophists as a group were perceived by the quote-unquote great philosophers or great rhetoricians of the time. So here Isocrates is setting himself apart from the Sophists, going through a laundry list of reasons why they cannot be trusted, and he is not one of them. Among these are criticisms and rejections of ideas of things like utilitarianism. For example, Isocrates claims that Sophists have no concern for the benefits of speeches that they might help someone write beyond just the fact that here you paid for this service and I'm helping you write this speech. That's looked down on very much so in this piece. And of course, underlying everything is Isocrates' basic rejection that anyone can become a great rhetorician through a specific study of the art. You're either born an orator or you're not. Now, this is very interesting, right? Because we see echoes of this very dichotomy in education, particularly around literacy, writing, literature. All of these disciplines take up a stance on this issue in one way or another. And I'll leave you to noodle out which one stands where. When we get on to the encomium of Helen, we're seeing, again, another example of Isocrates' rhetorical skill. He really, in his pieces, in his speeches, tends to be setting up for his students a model of what you could possibly do with a particular genre. So here, an encomium is basically, a defense or in praise of something. And Isocrates is responding to a work of Gorgias, who we talked about last week. And he has a piece by the same title where Gorgias basically turns Helen from despised, person who started the whole Trojan War, Patui. Gorgias turns her into a hero in his piece. And so here, Isocrates is like, yeah, I'm going to let you finish, but I'm going to do it better. So he sets up Helen as not just a hero in her own right, but actually by comparing her to Theseus, who absconds with her, he is setting up that comparison in order to sort of like roundaboutly praise her, which is interesting if we think about that from a modern standpoint of like, when you say things that are meant to be really like a slam, but you say them in a positive way. So here he is arguing basically that Helen is an object. And anyone who's a feminist is going to have immediate problems with that, right? But he sets up Helen as an object of beauty that thus honors and beautifies anyone who is enamored of her. So basically, he's like, yeah, man, this just shows us how cool Theseus was because he thought he saw her beauty, and so he knew what was up, and so he kidnapped her. Really here, a lot of commentators believe that Isocrates is making a bit of a political argument for Pan-Hellenism, or the idea that Athens really does deserve to be the seat of Grecian or Hellenistic power. And on a rhetorical note, he's kind of saying like, this is really how you do it. This is how you set up a real encomium, right? This is like an advertisement or a model for Isocrates' students. And he kind of has a lot of statements that really say this, like shots fired. But one of my favorites is when he says, in order to avoid the appearance of doing what is easy, criticizing others while making no point of my own, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to make this whole complicated point. Take that. So, what do we do with these pieces and what can we learn from them? Well, Papillon, who's one of the foremost scholars on Isocrates, has written about this Greek rhetorician lots and lots and lots and lots. But the piece that I'm having you guys read has to do with Isocrates' innovation, particularly when it comes to the concept of techne. So techne is like a very basic definition. Craft or ability has to do with creative skill. We apply this to writing a lot. Like, I'm sure you guys have heard about the craft of writing, thinking about writing as an art, as something that you create. So Papillon is arguing that Isocrates was really an innovator of rhetorical theory because he's not just using the concept of techne, which is usually attributed to sophists, but he's kind of like taking that idea of craft or skill, and instead of applying it to super specific genres like law oration or political speeches, he's kind of stretching it out and showing some of the broader implications of techne and how it could affect multiple different genres of speech or writing. And here near the very end, Papillon says that this is really one of the things that Isocrates brings to rhetorical theory, which is that he joins narration with argument to make something new, to make something more effective. Just in the same way he praises by comparison, like we saw in the encomium of Helen. He joins narration to argument to make a new kind of argument or persuasive communication. And then by the time we get to Glenn, here's where we're taking another sort of zag into questions of equality and feminism in ancient Greece particularly. So, a lot that we read about ancient Greece, and especially rhetorical history, focuses on men, 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 men. It almost feels like sometimes that there were no women because they don't show up a lot in recorded speeches or history unless they're like Helen in the encomium of Helen, like an object of analysis. So here Glenn is really interrogating women's place in rhetorical theory and in rhetorical history. And she really focuses in on this figure of Aspasia, arguing that we really need to change the landscape of our historical view because Aspasia is not the only woman of her kind, though she is one of the foremost and perhaps one of the most prominent, and yet even she was erased in large part from history. You really have to dig to find about Aspasia. So one of the points that Glenn makes is that, this woman was a powerhouse. She came in from outside. She, hooked up with Pericles and was so influential on him that he even reacted and responded to her differently than most Greek men reacted and responded to women. She talks about how the fact that he decided to live with Aspasia instead of sending her off to live with the women in the women's quarters was shocking and revolutionary at that time. So she had a lot of influence both on Pericles and on Socrates. And in this, Glenn is sort of just demonstrating thing after thing after thing that this woman had this power. She was involved in political disputes. She was involved in helping people craft these really famous speeches. And even though she's so brilliant, she's been subverted by patriarchal approaches to rhetorical history. Basically, who's ever heard of Aspasia? Everyone's heard of Socrates, but who heard of this woman who was very influential on Socrates? That's the question. And so really, Glenn is arguing something very closely aligned with Royster, who we read in week 1. That we really need to change the landscape, or we need to broaden our lens, our very narrow white male patriarchal lens on rhetorical history is leaving out a lot of folks who were powerful, brilliant, and very influential on the history that we claim to know. So there you have it. A quick overview, like I said, 20,000 feet on our week 3 readings. I hope it helps you to get situated and to put all these pieces together in the delightful little puzzle that they are arranged in. Okay, I'm going to pull back to our full view and then I'll close out this video. Okay, so that about does it for me for week 3. Hopefully this stuff has been very helpful for you. If you have any questions about the readings, please shoot me an email and or set up a Zoom or a Skype appointment. We can always talk through a lot of this stuff. Sometimes it helps to verbalize it. So just let me know. The last thing is that regarding your discussions, as I am grading them, I'm taking into account some key things. So first of all, just a gentle admonishment. Some of y'all haven't participated in discussions yet. If this is you, don't fret, don't lose heart. You can definitely jump into this week's discussions. Make sure that you're there for your classmates and that you're participating in helping everyone think through these readings. Okay? Okay. So if you have been participating in discussions, and if you're nervous about the fact that, not everyone's participating, or I don't see my classmates' comments, so I can't get to them in time. First of all, the first one is an easy fix. I am going to be grading your discussions based on the number of participants that there are. So I won't be docking points if you don't quantitatively have like 10 exact comments. What I do want to see is lively and thoughtful communication between all the group members thinking through these readings. So I do want to see that. If I don't see that happening, I might take some points off. But if I do see that happening and it's not like quantifiably the right amount of like exact utterances, I'm not going to take points off. Does that make sense? Now for the last point, just make sure that you guys are getting started on your discussions early enough so that everybody can fully participate. We should be starting discussion no later than like Saturday morning, preferably by Friday, right? That should give you guys enough time to be reading through everything, working through your reading response. Then you can participate in the discussion over a couple days' time. If we start the discussion on like Sunday afternoon, that's just shitty for everyone, right? So make sure you're giving yourself enough time and giving your group enough time to respond appropriately. Okay, again, if you guys have any questions about any of this stuff, feel free to email me. Otherwise, I hope y'all are having a great week. Bye, everybody.